Thanks very much, Grant, and it's a pleasure to be here. I've been a strong champion, actually, for reform of governance in Auckland for quite some years, and I was delighted to have Bob Harvey up here earlier as a person who actually was a little bit of a sceptic about the new governance reform pre-merger, coming through and actually saying that this has worked pretty well, and I think he was a pretty strong champion for that governance reform. And I think this is a really important issue for the Waikato region and in fact for all of local government across New Zealand. That the establishment of the Auckland Council with 1.5 million people will and has already energised that council into doing something pretty significant. It's only been going 20 months, but already you can see the marked transformation that that has had on the leadership and ability to implement major decisions in infrastructure development. And that was one of the key reasons why we felt as an organisation that infrastructure reforms, governance reform for infrastructure was a key imperative if we were really going to make that city tick. And one of the things that was dividing Auckland is the fact that we didn't have a common vision about what we wanted to achieve as a city. And there was a development of a growth strategy for Auckland, and it was felt that would create the common vision. Well, what that did was that everyone agreed round the table, all the politicians agreed round the table what was required for the region, and then they all promptly walked away to their own respective patches with their own pots of money and did what they wanted in their own time. And we didn't have a consistent voice with government. So one mayor would go to central government and say one thing and then suddenly find another mayor has said, oh yeah, well, he might say that, but actually we think. And so there was a lack of clarity about what we were trying to achieve as a city and region. And I think there's a really good opportunity for other regions across the country to think about their role now in the light of that. Across the Waikato region you have about 400,000 population as I understand it. You know, that stacks up pretty well against 1.5 million just to the north of you. But do you have a collective vision about how you grow the economic performance of this region? And are you all pulling the same strokes to enable that to occur so that the people of the region really prosper and grow and develop? How do you plan an integrated infrastructure network and provide the support services to that wider region on the most cost-effective basis? But on the other hand, how do you respond to the need, as was clearly expressed this morning, about providing for community involvement and engagement and participation? And so there's kind of three things that need to be done. One, long-term strategy about the future direction of the region and how you can not only compete with, but support and leverage off Auckland to the north and your other regions that are neighbours to you. So what is the overarching spatial infrastructure economic strategy for the region and how can you capitalise on that? That's a leadership, it's understanding where you're going and having an aspiration as to how you're going to get there. Secondly, you want to provide core infrastructure services, good water supply, good roads, good services across your community for things like the rubbish collection, whatever, parks, whatever it might be. Now, the practice in Auckland shows that if you get scale, you can achieve some real benefits from scale. And in fact, recently, and I was going to show you the slides on this, we might even be able to go there, the New Zealand Council for Infrastructure Development and Water New Zealand, among a number of other parties, I'm just going to skip past this because I've kind of did and with the collaboration of a number of councils in the Waikato region and across the country, did an analysis of what would it take to bring water service provision, and we're talking about the provision of potable water and wastewater services here. What would it take to get these councils to best practice using the infrastructure report card that came out earlier in the year, which actually rated water supply across New Zealand as a bit of a problem. And they used a traffic light system for green, red or orange depending on the performance, and they were looking at things like investment analysis, the provision for resilience and water services, funding mechanisms, accountability and performance, regulation and coordination. And to their credit, the councils in this region said, we'd like to compare ourselves against that benchmark and see how we come up, because we want to be best practice in the provision of water. Good on you. Now what that study showed, and you can see the results there, it does show that where you have scale, where you have specialisation of staff and capability and high technical expertise, then you can get some better results. You can do it through shared services, and there are a number of councils that are achieving positive results through shared services. But you don't do it quite as well as if you have a single purpose organisation, because inevitably shared services usually means some sort of compromise in terms of decision-making processes, and sometimes results in lack of focus and lack of specialisation. That doesn't mean to say it's not a model that you can leverage and gain from, but the experience to date shows that a single purpose organisation can give you a better outcome. So let's just take water across the Waikato region. Why could you not have a single purpose council-controlled or councils-controlled water services agency to provide water across the region? Wouldn't that give you the scale and capability to be able to get the expertise that you want whilst still achieving a level of local control? There's one option. I just want to go back a couple of slides and have a look at roading for a minute. And I know that the Waikato Expressway is probably, I think, the regional priority in terms of a transport investment. That project is, I've been in the AA for 20 years before, I think I've now been in this role 6 years. And the Waikato Expressway has been on the list of projects in all that time, and it's not yet completed. And in fact, it did look pretty promising that the government was going to complete that project within 10 years, or substantially complete that project within 10 years in 2008 when they came in. Well, I have to tell you, it looks like it's slipping, as are many of the RONs slipping, simply because the revenue streams into the National Land Transport budget are not what was expected, and the costs of these projects are proving to be more expensive than we had anticipated, and the pressures of Christchurch rebuild as well. So there's a real risk that that project, which is of strategic significance to the development of the region, will continue to slip. That is simply not tolerable. And what we need, I would have thought across the Waikato region, is a very strong, empowered voice to government, to New Zealand, that this is a project of national significance and it needs to go ahead. Why on earth you would build a strategic piece of roading like that in bits, where you have a piece of 4-lane highway and then a piece of 3-lane highway, then a piece of 2-lane highway back out to a 4-lane highway, is just beyond me. But that is how we are thinking about how we do big things in New Zealand. And that sort of paradigm needs to change. Getting the understanding about how the Waikato region works as a whole and how that particular investment is core to your economic growth and performance as a region is one of the benefits that might come from a much more substantive voice. By the way, this was Auckland. I think it would be worthwhile doing a similar exercise for Waikato. And what does your region look like? It's probably not that complicated, but I bet you it could be a lot less complicated. Here's an alternative view of what a Waikato region might look like, and this is for illustrative purpose only, but I just want to walk you through this diagram, because it's largely the diagram or the model that was applied in Auckland. A single council with a number of key committees. Its purpose as a council is to look at the overarching strategic development of the region. How do we leverage the best economic performance for the region? How do we provide the best governance over our provision of services? And how do we galvanise the Waikato community about, or the whole region, to deliver the sorts of outcomes that the community wants. There was a lot of conversation this morning about the need for community engagement. In the Auckland structure, we have what are known as local boards. In NZCID, we actually promoted the idea of community councils, because we see those governing bodies as being a combination of traditional council functions, but with a very strong community focus. And hopefully you can see on the screen the sort of services that are provided by the community councils. It's being the eyes, ears and voice of the community. It's making sure that that feeling of place that was spoken about this morning is actually empowered through the local community council. It's about making sure the streets, the business plans, the business community, the parks, the amenities, the services are actually the sports grounds, the culture is supportive of the community. And it's about having a much more close relationship with the people of the community. And it's also in a rural setting about having sufficient funding, either through a rating capacity, which is one option, or at least a dedicated fund from the governing body to enable that community support to be provided. On the other side of the ledger, is the council-controlled organisation. So I'm coming across, I'm trying to find my little, on the left of the screen. So proposing one for the region, for water, one for economic development and tourism and events, one for urban development strategy if that's what's required, effectively the property arm, major regional facilities like the stadia, and council investments. Their role is to bring in the best minds that you can get across your region to effectively manage those regional assets the best way they possibly can. So this is like the CCO structure of the Auckland Council, with strong governance, strong capability, and the ability to be able to do things at economies of scale and the sort of size that is simply not possible in the smaller structures. And then obviously at the centre is the administrative structure that supports all of the long-term regulatory functions of the councils, but also a significant side of the council that is responsible to support the community councils in delivering the community culture and regulation in that area. So it's kind of the best of all worlds, if you think about it. Dedicated CCOs that get on with providing the best possible regional services, so that when the ratepayer turns on the tap, it is quality water, or when they drive down the road, it's quality roading. And the ears, voice of the community is in the community council, and the role of those CCOs is to serve those community councils and be accountable to them. And then providing the strong long-term regional leadership at the council level, the Waikato Council. A best of both worlds. I pose that as an option because I think this is an opportunity for the Waikato region, and it's great to hear that you're having the conversation. And I know there will be concerns because there were all sorts of concerns in Auckland around this change as well, I can tell you. As a champion out there, I went and visited many communities, and they were very resistant, many of them initially. But it was kind of a no-brainer for Auckland. If you really wanted to make that city grow, carving it up into a whole bunch of smaller areas was not the way to achieve it. Now, I've skipped through a few things earlier I just want to go back to. The one thing that we've done quite a bit of international research on what's happening in this area along the lines that Peter has as well. And one of the very clear trends internationally in local government is the move to spatial planning. Spatial planning that thinks about long-term economic development of a region. It talks about the development strategy for the region and how that will progress. It talks about very wide participation of a much broader community so that you can get alignment of thinking across the whole region about what you're trying to achieve. It identifies the location of critical infrastructure, where that's going to go, because that will be the framework as to how you build your region for the future. It identifies the location and mix of business and residents and where's the best place for that to go, and how does the land use and transport investment in particular support one another in terms of that development. Critically, it identifies the no-go areas. What are the ecological treasures that we will protect as a region? We'll identify and protect them so that everyone knows the rules about where you can and can't develop. It aligns implementation regulatory plans of councils so that when the private sector or those international investors are looking to invest in your region, they have one set of rules that they work to, not 7 or 8. They know who's in charge. They know who does what. It makes it easy to do business. It talks about integrating coherent and combined investment and having a relationship between your regulatory structures and how investment will go. And it provides the coordination mechanism across the region to enable that investment to occur. And it becomes the focus so that when private sector and government look to the Waikato region, they have a very clear understanding that there is a united view about what we're going to achieve and how we're going to achieve it. And that's how you engage positively with central government about your priorities. In terms of planning, wouldn't it be great if we had integrated planning between central government, regional government and local districts? We don't have that at the moment. Spatial planning is about achieving that sort of alignment, and I'll leave you to have a look at that chart later because there's a lot of detail, too much to cope. When I look at the Waikato region, I say, and I went to the website, where is the spatial economic development path forward for the region? It's not clear to me. Who's leading it? And do all of the agents within the region have the capability to deliver on it? Some questions for you. There was an article in the local paper, Kopu bridges go, but our other roads wait. Why? Why do they need to wait? Why isn't Waikato up in the queue like Auckland is, like Wellington is, and everyone else is? It's about having strength of voice, strength of purpose, and understanding and telling a compelling story. And that's how you engage both the private sector investment community and central government in supporting that. So from my perspective, and I'm an outsider looking in, but I say it is a fantastic opportunity for the Waikato region. You've got a model that is working but can be tweaked from Auckland to learn from, and I would encourage a very strong debate. You do not have to lose community identity. In fact, you can strengthen it. But put the things that are regional in a regional place and put the things that are local in a local place, and then you'll get the best of both worlds. So I would encourage this conversation. From an infrastructure point of view, infrastructure doesn't respect local authority boundaries that well. The pipes tend to need to go through, or the roads tend to need to go through. And actually people are using those services across those boundaries. So why not have a governance structure that respects that? So I'm going to leave it there. We'll have plenty of time for Q&A afterwards, but hopefully that'll give some opportunity for debate. Thank you.